he walked away from the only creature who ever loved him, and it waited, day after day, until it died. That one sentence has broken millions of hearts across the American West. But this isn't just another sad dog story. It's a brutal, beautiful truth about guilt, loyalty, and the price of survival. In today's video, we bring you one of the most powerful true Western stories you'll ever hear, the kind that stays in your chest like a splinter you can't pull out. It's the story of Caleb Rawlins, a man who committed a crime to save his brother and abandoned his only friend to do it. That friend wasn't a lawman, wasn't a preacher, wasn't even human. It was Dusty, a mutt with 3 legs, a crooked bark, and a heart too big for this world. What happens when a man chooses freedom over loyalty? What happens when a dog waits until it starves because it still believes you'll come back? If you're someone who's ever lost a pet, who's ever carried guilt, who's ever wondered what if I had done it differently, then don't you dare skip this. Because this story will not only shake you to your core, it might just heal something that's still bleeding quietly inside you. So grab a blanket, hold your heart. This is the bark that never came back, and it's a story you will never forget. The morning light spilled across the Thornfield Ranch like honey poured slow and golden over the land. It touched the corral posts, the weathered barn, and the porch swing that hadn't moved since Sarah's husband died 5 winters ago. The air smelled of leather, sun-warmed cedar, and the faint sweetness of hay, a scent that had greeted Caleb Thornfield every morning for 15 years. He pulled on his boots in the quiet pre-dawn stillness, worn brown things that had known more dust than polish, and reached for his hat without hurry. Another day of honest work waited, mending fences, checking the west pasture, hauling grain to the feed barn before the heat set in. He didn't know that it would be his last. By the time the sun crested the hills, Caleb was by the south fence line, crouched to check for loose nails. The wood groaned under his hand, dry from summer. That's when the sound of boots behind him broke the rhythm of the morning. He looked up. Jeremiah Knox stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, face tight, like a man holding a knife behind his back. "You can stop that," Knox said, chin lifting. "Pack your things. You're done here." The words came like a bullet to the chest. No warning, no build-up, just finality. Caleb straightened slowly, dusting his hands on his pants. He studied the younger man's face, reading the familiar edge of resentment and smug satisfaction that had lingered there for years, ever since Sarah, the widowed ranch owner, began trusting Caleb's judgment over Knox's posturing. "I'm sorry," Caleb asked, voice calm but tight. "You heard me. Widow Sarah says your services are no longer needed. Ranch needs younger blood." Caleb stared, saying nothing at first. The silence stretched between them like a drawn rope. "I want to hear it from her." "She's in town," Knox said, smirking. "Left instructions before she rode out this morning. You're to be gone by sundown." A wind moved through the mesquite trees beyond the fence. The creak of saddle leather echoed from the barn. The world went on like nothing had happened, and yet Caleb felt the ground shift beneath his boots. "You think I don't know what this is," Caleb said, his voice low. Knox shrugged. "Think what you want. You're old, slow, and in the way." It was a lie, and a thin one at that. Caleb had helped build this place, laid the foundation for the bunkhouse with his own hands, branded cattle until his knuckles bled, chased rustlers through moonless nights, and rode out into blizzards to pull calves from frozen earth. His back might ache and his joints might stiffen on cold mornings, but his hands were steady, his instincts sharp, and his word still meant something. None of it mattered now. Knox turned and walked away without another word, leaving Caleb alone with the wind and the fence he would no longer mend. Caleb stood for a long time after Knox left, one hand resting on the fence post, thumb running absent-mindedly along a splinter in the grain. His chest felt tight, not with rage, but with the hollow ache of something cracking slow inside. It wasn't his heart, it was deeper than that. His soul had slipped loose and was looking for a place to land. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. The men were out in the north fields, the house empty, the wind still. Even the cattle in the distance seemed to chew slower, as if the world was waiting for Caleb to decide whether to stand tall or crumble. He turned and walked toward the bunkhouse. Inside, the room was bare but neat. His saddlebags, bedroll, an old wool blanket folded with military precision, 15 years of his life now reduced to what could fit into a worn leather satchel, and the folds of memory. There were no goodbyes, no farewells, just a man packing in silence. When the door creaked open behind him, Caleb didn't have to look. Dusty, the border collie, stepped inside, paws soft on the wooden floor, tail giving one quiet wag. His coat was sun-bleached black, save for a white blaze on his chest and a single gray patch over his left eye. Those warm brown eyes met Caleb's, questioning but calm. He knew something had changed. Dogs always do. Caleb crouched low and rubbed behind the dog's ears, voice gravel thick. "Well, boy, looks like we're done here." Dusty leaned into the touch, letting out a soft whine, not of fear but of solidarity. He didn't need explanation. He didn't want vengeance. He just wanted to stay beside his man, wherever that man might be going. They walked past the barn, past the watering trough Caleb had repaired with spare planks and a rusted hinge last spring. His boots left faint tracks in the dry earth, each step echoing not just weight but finality. Dusty trotted alongside, head held low, not dragging, but not joyful either. At the gate, Caleb paused. He looked back just once. The ranch sat behind him in golden quiet, the corral, the bunkhouse, the far-off ridge where he'd once watched a herd ride in like thunder. Everything familiar, everything now forbidden. Not even a bird called out. No one came to stop him. No one came to thank him. And so, with the leather strap of his satchel digging into one shoulder and the loyalty of a dog who had no reason to trust any man but him, Caleb Thornfield stepped off the property for the last time. The dust rose behind them in little clouds, catching the light like smoke. It was the kind of exit no one saw, but one that would echo in the bones of the land long after the boots were gone. The road stretched out like judgment, dry, cracked, and merciless. It shimmered under the late afternoon sun, a ribbon of heat that offered no promise and less forgiveness. Caleb walked with his head down, boots stirring soft clouds of dust with every step. Dusty padded beside him, tongue lolling, his usual alert trot replaced by the weary rhythm of a creature pushing past his limit. They'd been walking for hours, and the canteen was half empty. Caleb rationed each sip, always letting Dusty drink first. Up ahead, a lone rider approached from the ridge, hat low, horse thin and steady. As the man came closer, Caleb recognized the face Marcus Reed, owner of a modest spread near the valley, the kind of man who'd once come begging for help during a hard freeze 5 years back, when his cattle were dying and his fences falling. Reed reined in beside him, leather saddle creaking. "Heard you left Widow Sarah's place," he said, voice unreadable. "Didn't have much choice," Caleb replied, adjusting the satchel strap digging into his shoulder. Reed's eyes flicked to Dusty, then back to Caleb. He cleared his throat. Knox has been talking. Says you were skimming feed, selling it on the side. Caleb blinked, but said nothing at first. Then, that's a damn lie. I know, Reed said quickly. I figured it was, but words traveling fast. You know how folks are, especially when the man wearing the badge is the one talking loudest. It hit Caleb harder than any fist ever had. It wasn't just about being fired anymore. It was about being erased. In a land like this where men were measured by their reputation, and a handshake was as binding as any contract, a lie was a slow-spreading poison. Caleb wasn't just unemployed. He was untouchable. I got no work for you, Reed added softly. Wish I did. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Bread. Some jerky. It ain't much. He dropped it gently near Caleb's feet. Ride safe, Reed muttered. And then he was gone, dust trailing behind his horse, like smoke from something already burned. Caleb stood still a moment, the bundle untouched. Then he bent to pick it up and kept walking. The sun dipped low by the time they saw the outskirts of Copper Creek, a tired little town with more ghosts than horses. Just a stretch of wood-planked buildings, their windows glowing orange with lamplight as dusk settled in like a slow sigh. Caleb's legs ached. Dusty walked with his head nearly dragging. The dog had worked cattle that morning, run 4 miles in the sun, and now followed his master into an unknown future without complaint. The saloon was the only building with its doors open, light and muffled voices spilling out beneath the faded sign Bradley's. Caleb paused beneath the bat-wing doors, brushing dust from his coat, then stepped inside. The room was dim, the air thick with smoke and sweat. A handful of men sat hunched over cards or nursing drinks. The bartender, a broad-shouldered man with gray whiskers and tired eyes, looked up. No dogs. He won't cause trouble. Just needs water, Caleb said. Something in his voice quiet, worn. Not quite begging made the man hesitate. Then he nodded and filled a chipped metal bowl from a pitcher, setting it on the floor behind the bar. Dusty drank deeply, tail giving one weak wag. What about you? The bartender asked. Caleb reached into his pocket and found only 12 cents. Just the dog, thanks. The man poured a shot of whiskey anyway and slid it across the bar. On the house, he said. Man walking the road with nothing but a dog and a shadow behind him gets 1 drink, no questions. Caleb nodded once. The whiskey burned in his throat, sharp and clean like honesty. Then the door creaked again. 3 men stepped inside, the kind of men who brought cold with them. Their leader, tall, scarred, eyes too still, looked straight at Dusty and grinned. Well, now, he drawled, ain't that a fine-looking dog? Caleb's fingers tightened on the glass. They didn't know it yet, not fully, but they had just laid eyes on the one thing Caleb Thornfield might still be willing to fight for, and the price of survival was about to get steeper. The man with the scar walked toward Caleb's table with the swagger of someone used to being obeyed. He sat without asking, elbows spread wide, flanked by 2 shadows, one thin and twitchy, the other thick as a bear and twice as mean-looking. Name's Clayton Marsh, he said, setting a heavy roll of bills on the table like he was laying down a loaded gun. I run cattle north of here, always looking for good dogs. That one's got smart eyes. $50 cash. Fair offer. Caleb didn't blink. He's not for sale. Marsh smiled without warmth. Everything's for sale, friend, just a matter of price. Around them, the saloon went quiet, even the card game in the corner stalling mid-hand. Caleb's fingers twitched reflexively toward a holster that no longer existed. He'd sold his gun 3 months ago when the widow's payments dried up. Marsh leaned in, voice low and oily. $50 buys you food, roof, maybe even a second chance. But that mutt, he's just a mouth to feed. Dusty had curled under Caleb's chair, body pressed close. Brown eyes locked on his master's face like they were tethered by something older than words. "You don't understand," Caleb said, barely louder than a whisper. "That dog's the last thing in this world that still believes in me." Marsh didn't flinch. "You think I care about sentiment? I see a working dog with strong legs. You see a memory. One of us is being practical." Caleb stared at the roll of bills, heart pounding. $50 was salvation. $50 was food, shelter, a stage ticket out of this purgatory. But $50 was also betrayal carved into leather. "No," he said again, this time firmer. Marsh's smile faded. "Don't be stupid." He stood, adjusted his coat, and nodded toward the door. "We're camped just north of town. You bring me that dog before dawn. We shake hands. You don't well. I ain't known for patience." With that, the three men left, their boots echoing against wood like nails into a coffin. Caleb sat motionless for a long time, Dusty's breathing steady beside him. Then Tom Bradley, the bartender, came around with 2 tin plates, beans, and salt pork, steaming. "You look like a man deciding whether to lose his soul or his stomach," he said. Caleb said nothing. Bradley lit a pipe, blew smoke toward the ceiling. "Knew a man once, hard times, sold his dog, used the money to get back on his feet, built a new life, house, family, the whole bit, but every night for the rest of his life, he'd sit on the porch and listen for a bark that never came." Caleb's jaw clenched. "What happened to the dog?" "Went quiet the day after. Wouldn't eat. Laid by the road until he died." Silence settled like dust. Then Bradley said, "There's another way. Stage leaves tomorrow heading east. Driver's a friend. Might take you if you help with the horses, but he don't take animals. Insurance, he says." Caleb looked down at Dusty. The dog thumped his tail once, as if forgiving him in advance. Bradley continued, "There's a family outside town, Hendersons. Got kids, good folks. They'd take him. He'd be safe." Caleb closed his eyes. Safe wasn't the same as loved. But sometimes safety had to be enough. At dawn, the sky a pale wash of gray. Caleb knelt by Dusty outside the stage office. "You're a good boy," he whispered, fingers digging into the dog's thick ruff. "The best boy." Dusty nuzzled his cheek, still thinking this was just another morning. Caleb tied his old red bandana around Dusty's neck. It smelled of sweat, hay, and all the quiet days they'd shared. A memory made cloth. Bradley took the leash gently. Dusty didn't resist, but after a few yards he stopped, turned, ears perked, eyes searching. "Tell them." Caleb started, then faltered. "Tell them they're lucky." He didn't watch them walk away. Couldn't. Inside the stage, the seat creaked under him. The driver nodded. "Ready," Caleb lied with his silence. As the wheels turned, he stared straight ahead, fists clenched. Behind him, somewhere out of sight, Dusty let out a single bark, sharp, confused, pure. Caleb bit the inside of his cheek until he tasted blood. The price had been named. The cost had been paid. He worked hard again, picking up odd ranch jobs, then settling at a small homestead near Gunnison. He had his own bed, now clean sheets, warm meals, and even a kind widow named Martha who took a liking to his quiet strength. They married in spring, planted beans in summer, and dance slowly by the fire in winter. But no matter how much peace the days brought, something always gnawed at his spirit. Every supper felt like a ghost was missing, one with muddy paws and bright eyes. Every morning, he waited for the sound of 4 feet padding across the porch, but the silence always answered first. Dusty wasn't there to greet the sun, or chase the crows from the fence, or lay his head on Caleb's boot at dusk. 1,000 small absences dug a canyon in Caleb's heart that no woman, no land, no harvest could fill. 3 weeks after Caleb vanished down that road, a dusty boy from Palisade arrived on horseback, carrying only a letter and something wrapped in linen. He said Dusty had refused to eat since the day Caleb left. The dog waited by the fence for a week, then curled beneath the old oak tree, head turned toward the horizon where the wagon disappeared. He passed quietly one night, as if sleep was gentler than waiting. The boy handed Caleb the bundle. It was the red bandana Caleb had once tied around Dusty's neck, now stiff and faded with dust and time. Caleb took it in both hands, fell to his knees in the tall grass, and wept until the mountains echoed with the sorrow of a man who had survived but not without cost. He never owned another dog again. Yet on cold, lonely nights when the wind blew through the pines just right, he swore he could hear a bark in the distance, soft, loyal, unforgiving. A ghost with 4 legs and a question that would never stop asking, why sometimes? Survival isn't the blessing we imagine, it's the sentence we carry. Caleb outlived the lawmen, the blood on his hands, even the years of hard labor. But he never outlived Dusty's absence. That old mutt never asked for much just to be by his side. And when Caleb made the choice to save himself, he broke a silent vow that dogs never break, to wait, to believe, to forgive without asking why. Dusty's loyalty was a mirror Caleb couldn't face until it was too late. And maybe that's the cruelest truth in this world. Sometimes the ones we leave behind are the only ones who truly stayed. So if you've got someone, man or mutt, who waits for you, who looks for you without question, go back. Say what needs to be said, feed that bowl, mend that fence, whisper that apology. Not every soul gets a second chance to be heard. And if this story stirred something deep in you, if it made you think of someone you lost, or someone who still waits, don't let it end here. Comment below with the name of the one you miss. Save this video as a reminder. And hit subscribe because the next story might just be the one that finally gives you peace. Sometimes healing begins with remembering. Sometimes it begins with hitting play.